It's that time again. Hello, everybody. Happy Thursday. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of TheNexGen Live. I'm Rory Sauter. Joining me is Greg Merck. We have Brian Perez. We have George Landreth. We'll probably be having a few more join us shortly. Gentlemen. It's been quite the week. A lot to discuss. Headline after headline. What a crazy time to be alive. We haven't done this show in about 3 weeks. So it is a breath of fresh air to be back with all of you. I've missed you all. I hope you all had a fantastic holiday season. 2024 is here. I've got optimism, but at the same time, I have doubts. All we can do is really hope for the best. And, pray we still have a country when this is all said and done with all this shit going on. Let's go to George Landreth.
Yes, sir.
Going to you first, man. What are you directing your focus towards? Give us the rundown. How was your holiday season? I want to hear from you, man. I haven't had you on, and we haven't had you on in about a month.
Yeah, well, lots of great things, obviously.
Because I got on with us right before we went to holiday break. I don't think you were. I think you were on the episode before that, which was like a month ago.
You may be right about that. I'm trying to think exactly when it was, but
yeah.
But the reality is, I had the opportunity to visit with family and get together with my adult children. That was a lot of fun, and well, what it reminded me of is how great family life is and how meaningful all that is. So it was awesome. But I have to be honest, when I look at the news and what's going on in the world today, it makes me kind of nervous for the future and for my family. Is there some background noise there?
Yeah, I was wondering the same thing. I was hearing that earlier.
Well,
Brian, I think it's coming from your end, Brian.
Is it? I'm on mute, so
now it's gone. Now it's gone. No more noise. I don't hear it anymore. Now we're good. George, go ahead. You got the green light.
All righty. Well, I just looking at different things in the news, and one of the things I find very interesting is Joe Biden has given 2 or 3 campaign speeches in the last several days. And interestingly enough, in none of those speeches has he outlined any successes or reasons why he should be reelected.
Right.
What he's basically focusing on is that his opponent is evil and that his opponent will destroy democracy. And I'm thinking this is really rich coming from the guy who's using the DOJ and the power of the federal government to go after his political opponents. I mean, this guy has no self-awareness. It's crazy.
Right.
It would be like someone, to be blunt, it'd be like, I don't know, Joe Stalin talking about the evils of putting people in gulags and killing them. Be like, really? Is that really your approach, Joe? And that's what this Joe's doing.
Right. And as a lawyer, what were your thoughts on the hearings this past week on Capitol Hill?
Well, there was some
we had Hunter Biden, we had Fauci, we had a bunch of characters.
Yeah, so I thought with Hunter Biden, it's interesting that he won't show up to testify, but what he will do is show up to sit in the back of the room for a few minutes, and then as soon as he thinks they might want to talk to him, he quickly leaves.
Right.
So I think it just kind of highlights the fact that this is a guy who's afraid of the facts, afraid to show up, afraid to follow the law, and he knows he has the support of his dad and the DOJ in not complying with the law. If you're in the Trump orbit, you better show up or Merrick Garland's coming for you. But if you're in the Biden orbit, no worry. You don't have to comply with the law. You don't have to show up. You can basically, just ignore everybody and do whatever the heck you want because daddy's got you covered. That's part of the craziness there. And then I thought with Dr. Fauci, he over 100 times said that he didn't know when asked about science and conversations about science. So science incarnate admitted to us, I hope you catch the jest there, because I don't actually believe he's science incarnate, but he claims he is. After all, criticizing him is the same thing as criticizing science. So, anyhow, bottom line is science incarnate 100 times when asked about science said, yeah, I don't remember. I don't know. It's like, okay, that gives me lots of confidence. That may explain why he did such a horrific job. Actually, though, that's probably cutting him too much slack, because I don't believe it was because he was stupid. I think it's because he had bad intentions.
And how is I don't recall an appropriate answer? Because we constantly see these elites use that term over and over. It's so repetitive. I mean, whenever they don't really want to answer a question or go around something, they'll just say, I don't recall.
Right. And the reason for that is because it's hard to prove that that's a lie. If you give a false answer, it's easy to prove it's a lie, because they can pull up the email and say, well, here on this date, you said this, this, and this, but now you're telling us something entirely different. Can you explain that one for us? And so what they do is, I don't recall, is this kind of amorphous concept of, well, my memory's failing me. And it's hard to prove that someone's memory isn't failing them. But the reality is, when you're asked 100 times about something that you're supposedly, like I said, he's science incarnate, and yet you ask him simple questions about science. I don't remember. I don't know. I don't remember. It's
kind of like pleading the fifth, right, George?
Huh?
It's kind of in a way of pleading the fifth, right?
It's pleading the fifth without pleading the fifth, because people don't want to plead the fifth, because when you plead the fifth, what you're basically saying is, if I tell you the truth, it might make me look bad.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so they don't want to say that. But on the other hand, just saying I don't recall, then they can kind of go, well, everybody. An example would be, if I asked you, what did you have for breakfast 86 days ago? You might go, I don't remember. And unless it was maybe your birthday, or it was Father's Day and someone was bringing you breakfast in bed or something unusual, you also wouldn't remember. But this isn't that case.
Right.
Okay. This is a situation where someone's asking about the things you did to lead a nation and what grounds you had for doing it.
Right.
And you'd kind of remember those things, because those would be big deals.
Right. And you brought up science. Speaking of science, did you see how the whole social distancing was debunked? And Fauci even admitted that was a lie, and that there was never any evidence to back it up. Wow.
That in a lab leak, right?
I read a bunch of studies.
I mean, how deceiving, how manipulative, how evil. Think about how many people became paranoid long-term because of this scamdemic. I mean, some people are never going back to normal with the way their psychosis is, and how their mind totally got messed up. It's crazy. Go ahead.
No, you're exactly right. And the funny thing is, they did this up one side and down the other. Almost everything they told us, almost every single word that Fauci uttered was a lie. And someone could say, oh, how do you know that? And the answer is, well, because I run a think tank, so I spend a lot of time. I'm not a scientist myself, but I've read the peer-reviewed science. And there's a ton of it that came out in the late 2019 year.
Yeah.
Before this, so it's not political. It's not aimed at the COVID. It was looking back at the previous 100 years, how we dealt with various pandemics, and what worked and what didn't work. And they were, some of them were Harvard studies, some of them were John Hopkins studies, but they basically came to the conclusion that lockdowns don't work, until Fauci thought they would work in 2020. But in 2019, 100 years worth of data said, yeah, long-term lockdowns don't work. They pointed out that it might be helpful to have a very, very brief semi-lockdown, just to kind of but nothing extended. Even 2 weeks was probably too long. And they talked about and they listed all the things in these studies that we saw happen in America that screwed things up: mental health issues, education, the economy, all kinds of things. That was a lot of the stuff they pointed out. And all of a sudden, though, we're to believe Anthony Fauci believed this was the right stuff. And I'm like, oh, so evidently Anthony Fauci can't even read studies, because George can.
Right. Yeah. I mean, this whole scenario divided the country
Yeah.
worse than we've ever seen. I mean,
Well, it was also designed, I think, to create a panic so that they could change the rules about voting all across the country, which they did in many states.
right.
And that ended up creating the background in which voter fraud could take place and other things like that. Whereas if you had all the old rules that existed previous to the pandemic, it would have been harder to do it. I'm not saying impossible, but harder. And so it also gave Joe Biden the option of running from his basement.
Yeah.
That was helpful because imagine him out on the campaign trail every day, stumbling around and mumbling around and, making it obvious to everyone. So a lot of what Fauci was doing was just simply designed to get rid of Donald Trump and to get Joe Biden elected. And that's why they were willing to lie, cheat, and steal on all the science stuff. And then now they're like, oh, I guess we were wrong. That wasn't right. But it's like, I'm sorry. I want him to serve time in jail because he committed perjury in previous testimony to Congress. And if you or I showed up in Congress and lied through our teeth to cover up things, they would put us in jail. So why not him?
Right. Suicides are at an all-time high, divorces that are at an all-time high, addictions at an all-time high.
Yeah.
It goes on and on. People on pharmaceuticals, all-time high after this scamdemic.
Small businesses that closed down, all-time high during
There
that.
you go, like 60% of small businesses.
Yeah, and many of them have not opened up again and won't.
Right.
Because they lost their life savings. You had a small, maybe you had a small restaurant that was doing well, but you had invested your whole life savings into it and it went under. And now you don't have any life savings to reinvest and start over. You're just done.
Just witnessing all of this, I'm beside myself. It's appalling.
And why is nothing being done?
It came so out of left field. I think that's one of the biggest problems. That's one of the things that is so terrifying. We were just living our everyday lives. Everything was okay. Everything seemed to be normal. And then all of a sudden, lockdowns, something we've never experienced in our lifetime. We've seen so many different viruses, so many diseases that are a million times worse than this. We didn't lock everybody in their homes. People were so new to this. Like, when you take somebody out of their routine and their structured environment, and you create these sort of situations, recipe for disaster.
Yeah. Well, and they also lied to us about the death rate and who was dying. Everybody who died in 2020, everybody. It was a COVID death. You could get shot. And if someone in your family said that you'd been coughing the day before, they'd listed it as a COVID death. They didn't need, there was a guy in Pennsylvania that got hit. He was on a motorcycle. He was hit in a head-on collision with a Mack truck. And they listed it as a COVID death. Because, if he hadn't had COVID, he would have survived, I'm sure.
Right.
And so what they did is they overstated the COVID deaths so as to create panic.
Right.
Because it turns out it was much more similar to maybe a relatively severe year of the flu.
Yeah.
And yet we don't shut the country down over the flu.
Right. And we all know the majority of people that really suffered and had major issues because of this virus were obese people, people with pre-existing conditions, and the elderly.
Not just the elderly, but the infirm, because there are a lot of older people who had no problem at all with it. But if you're elder, like the people who died the most were people in old folks' homes, but they tend to be people who are not just old, but suffering, from some infirmities because they need additional help and so forth.
Right.
But if you were 75, 80 years old and in good health and out walking a dog every day, then it pretty much hit you the same way it hit someone who was 40. So it wasn't just the old, it was the old and infirm.
And just remember, those people died by themselves too.
Yeah.
It's terrible. It's so awful to even think about. It's tragic.
Oh, yeah. That's right. It's kind of tragic to tell someone that just is slowly kind of, dying. Yeah, you'll just have to do that by yourself where nobody can be there. No one you love, no one you care about. And then to be that person's child and to be deprived the opportunity of those last moments. I know that in, my mother's case, being with her mother as she was, in hospice care dying of cancer, was a very meaningful and important experience.
Right.
And if someone had told her, no, you can't, that would have really left a big hole in her heart. For
Absolutely.
both of them, I suspect.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. We saw so many families divided, heartbroken through this entire process. I mean, just the stories I would read, the headlines, seeing people in various clips, like it's Greg, go ahead. Your thoughts on everything. Greg Merck.
Well, anytime somebody says they don't remember, that is, everybody knows that is to avoid perjury.
Right.
He remembers. He knows exactly what he did and why he did it. That's just to escape perjury. Perjury is a crime. It's punishable. And that's all Fauci was doing. Was interesting, though, that when pressed about whether or not the lab leak was a conspiracy, he denied that it was a conspiracy. So now it's a legitimate question to be asked. So he's done a complete 100% 180 on that. That we know. We all knew that it wasn't a conspiracy. Matter of fact, it's very much truth. Far more believable than the accidental bat cave escape. The science, there was no science between the distancing, and he all knew that. But again, it goes back to what I've always said is the progressive template. Blank, never about blank, always about change. The pandemic response was not about protecting the people. It was about fundamental change, and none of it was rooted in science, because it's not about that. It's not about the science. They're looking to change and conform. This was kind of a prelude to greater control to come. I think it was a lot of ways, it was an opportunity for them to impose draconian methodologies to which they can control the masses. And the global movement did exactly that. So we all know it wasn't about science. The mask, look, we've used masks in science and medicine for years, decades. We know how valueless they are in terms of a virus of this sort. And I remember speaking before the city board that was talking about imposing mask mandates early on in the pandemic. And as somebody who worked in my father's company, there were specific requirements on wearing masks that you could not wear them for extended periods of time. You could only wear them for so long. You had to take them off because they were harmful to wear these masks. And yet they were going to impose these. And I said, not only that, but the science is clear. They're not going to stop. But we know that. It's like trapping flies with a chain link fence. All of this we know. The science, it said exactly the opposite, but it was never about the science. It was about fundamental change in controlling the masses. And we will get more of the same, because that's what the progressive movement is about. And it's really tragic, because I think that if the American people would just put things in that frame of reference, look, this is not about what it seems. Blank's not about blank. It's about change, control, wealth redistribution. I think everything would bring clarity. It would bring clarity to why things happen. And I don't think people would get in line and just march lockstep to what government tells them if they understood everything within that very simple framework. Blank is never about blank. It's always about fundamental change. We ought to be suspicious and skeptical of every single thing the government tells us, whether it's coming from Republicans or Democrats. Always question it. Due diligence, be suspicious, and search for the truth. Don't just accept what they're telling us, because they always have an agenda.
Yeah, it's true. And when you have 70% of the population comply, which they did during this experiment, the government will continue to abuse their powers and do it again. Why wouldn't they? If they know it works the first time, what do you think, Greg?
Yeah, look, I mean, and
this is that's weak. That's weak to me, and I think it's nice saying 30% fought back. I think that's nice. I would say more like maybe 25%. I mean, I want to say 30%,
maybe even lower,
but I think that's being nice. But I think that's pathetic that there's not more people that fight back. There's too many that just sit back, bow down, and obey, and are good little puppy dogs.
And that's what's going on,
because there's a sense of helplessness. You go into an airport, all right, and I don't care how how much you know, what you know about the science and masks, they're going to force you to wear that mask, or else what? They're going to call the police, they're going to call security, they're going to kick you out, and you're not going to fly in the airplane. So
Right.
when they have you like that, and this is what totalitarian governments do, they just strip away all of your rights and abilities. You're helpless. Go into a store. If you're not wearing a mask, they're going to call the police. So you put the stupid mask on. So it's very difficult for, you could say that 30, 40, 50% of the American people disagreed with all of the measures that were imposed on us by state, local, and federal governments. And yet, all of us are individuals in our communities. And how do you fight back as a bunch of individuals scattered throughout the country? You just comply. You're forced to comply. That's why it is extremely important that you put the kind of people in local government as well as state government and federal governments that share your values and your vision and what you believe freedom means to the American people and the American way of life. Because if you just allow them to do that and you're seeking self-fulfillment, hey, what can this guy do for me, and not the betterment of the country, you get this. You get these kind of administrations, and it runs very deep in local governments, very deep in state and the federal government. So, while many people disagreed what's happening, there was a sense of helplessness. Because when these laws were passed, people were forced to comply. It's either that or you don't get on an airplane. You don't get to travel. You don't go into the store. You're going to get thrown out. It's sad. This is what Marxism is all about. This is just one more step. It's just one more instrument in their toolbox of how they control the masses. And step by step, brick by brick, they take away your freedom. And before you know it, you just comply, just because what else can you do? And this is a black swan event. This is what black swan events do. They catch you by surprise and they create massive chaos to which people become crisis managers, and you all have to step in line. And it's not the first black swan, and it won't be the last.
Right. And I can only imagine how extreme it could get in the future. I mean, I think as bad as this was, I think it was minor compared to what they have planned in the long run, compared to how they want to control us. Fair to say?
Yes.
Oh, well, it's part of it, but everything is a process for.
Like they're testing the waters. They're seeing what they can get away
That's
with.
right. Yep.
I believe they've had this in the works for a long time. I don't think
For sure.
Go ahead.
Well, I think they had the ultimate. Look, the ultimate goal is global movement, global control, no national boundaries. That is the. Now, they're not saying we're going to do X, Y, and Z. They're not. You know what? They can't predict the future. They just know that the ultimate goal is this, and everything is an opportunity through which they can carry out their goal. The pandemic, it was not. I don't believe that. Hey, let's launch a pandemic. Let's do some gain of function research, and they will launch this out. We're going to kill a bunch of people. But everything is an opportunity for them. Now, when these kind of things happen, yes, it's a prelude of more to come, but it's not. I'm not going to go down. I don't have to go down the road of, hey, it's just a conspiracy. They created this pandemic to get. Yeah, you don't have to get there. These things happen organically. Take the 2008 financial crash. There were not people, Lehman Brothers and all of the financials were getting together and AIG. Hey, let's do this. Let's collapse the market, and then the government will pay $1 trillion bill. No, but these things happen, and when they happen, immediately there's this massive expansion of the federal government and control, and they implement these measures that again undermine the free market capitalist system, put more control to the government. And this has been happening, didn't just happen in the last 10 years. This has been happening for 100+ years in this country. It started on Jekyll Island in 1912 and in 1913 when they created this monstrosity called the Federal Reserve. Everything is an opportunity for this movement, this globalist ideal to come to fruition. So I don't have to get there to say that they're planning X, Y, and Z specifically. But they do have an ultimate goal, and everything that presents itself becomes an opportunity for them to achieve it.
Yeah. Brian.
Well, this is why we are where we are today. That I believe it was definitely a test run. I definitely think they wanted to see how many people would actually fall in line. You mentioned 70%. I definitely believe it was more. They wanted to see who was willing to fight back and who wasn't. It's Fracci, like these guys have said, George and everybody has stated, he's come out and admitted things. Wait till all the real facts and evidence come out. He should be charged with crimes against humanity, genocide, not even just for this, but for the AIDS pandemic that he caused and created as well. Our own government. And I believe that's why Hunter Biden even just showed up and kind of did a middle finger to everybody, because he knows the Republican Party is not going to do anything about it. For Fauci to come out and admit the things he's done, for Hunter to do what he's been doing, like George even said, as an attorney, if it was one of us that was in contempt of Congress, that we've already been arrested and charged. That's what they're doing to President Trump. We're in a banana republic where a certain group of people, the MAGAs, the people who believe in our Judeo-Christian principles, who love our republic, we cannot get away with anything. We are living in a Marxist communist era. They definitely want to implement the new world order, one world order, and that's why our borders are wide open. That's why the Republicans caved on the continued resolution, and they did not get anything for border security at all. And we're just going to continue down this road in 2024. I definitely believe is going to be a hell of a crazy ride, as many of us have been talking about and predicted. Granted, we're not Jesus, we're not God, so we can't say 100%, but using common sense and history repeating itself, I definitely see 2024 as a wild, crazy ride that we all need to buckle up for. I'm personally waiting to see the economy when the dollar is going to collapse and crash. If it does, I'm not an economist, so I don't know, but just seeing the trends, and you can't keep printing money, and with the interest rates being where they're at, not being higher or lower, soon it's got to bust. It just can't keep going. And who, like I think Greg mentioned 2008, where our own government bailed out the banks and everything. Everybody else continues to always be bailed out, but you know who's never bailed out? There's those small business owners who had to shut their business down, that never got to reopen. There's people who were killed. Obviously, you can't bring human life back, but yet we have January 6th people who are being politically persecuted for just walking in the Capitol or even just being around the Capitol, and yet they still keep coming for them. And yet we had a fake vice president who bailed out Black Lives Matter, which is a terrorist organization, which was burning down small businesses, which was burning down federal buildings, killed police officers, killed everyday people, and nothing happened to them. But yet we have people that peacefully and patriotically protested the real insurrection of the stolen election back in 2020, and we still have yet to. Our government doesn't fear the Republican Party; it fears we, the people. We, the people who showed up on January 6th to hold our government accountable, and that's why they were doing what they were doing, because they don't want us to stand up together. They don't want us united under God. They want us, like Merck even said, individuals. They want us to continue to go in individually. Like myself, I was arrested at the school board. I don't even have kids. I was telling my own school board that you shouldn't be forcing children to wear masks. That's child abuse. You are child abusers, and they should all be arrested. But yet, because I'm one person, it's easy to take me out. We should have had a whole bunch of damn
Merrick Garland says you're a domestic terrorist because you showed up at a school board meeting to talk to the people who run the school system. How dare you?
Yeah. And
I hope everyone catches the sarcasm in my voice with all.
Oh yeah, for sure. I do, for sure. No, it's just mind-boggling that people keep sitting back and after seeing the test run of 2020 in the last three years. Like, what is it really going to take for people to wake up and take back our republic? Because our republic is on very thin thread. I don't even know if it's savable, because just seeing the laziness, the entitlement, the people just so brainwashing. Like, there's people here in Florida that I see wearing masks. I'm like, if you're still falling for that, go get your booster and your days. And for these people here in Florida, they're filing a petition to get abortion back on the ballot. And these are people want an abortion even after a baby is born. And like I always tell them, I go, why can't we abort you since you already have been alive and you're for abortion, why not just take you out if you're so miserable of this life? Why not? We'll replace you. We'll take you out. We'll save the baby that is in the mother's tummy and give them your spot. And people think I'm a nut job, yet killing a life is okay to them, but you want to, you just play the stupid reverse psychology on them and they think you're the nut job. We got to stop playing all these communist Marxist games. We have to call it out what it is. Stop calling dudes that dress up as chicks and go play in their sport girls, because they're not. They're men. They're males. And we got to stop playing these political games, because all it does is just keep their agenda going, keep their agenda moving forward. And it's time we take back our republic, because stuff is going to happen, y'all. They're not going to let Biden go campaign again. I think he's going to be replaced, but they still can't let that guy talk. Like George just stated earlier, he spoke 3 times since we've been gone. Like, dude, this guy's an idiot. This guy shouldn't be talking. He shouldn't be out and about. He should be in a mental health institution in a home, eating pudding and drooling on his sleeve or whatever. And also the Epstein list. But they haven't put out the names yet. They said they're releasing all the documents, but nobody's name still hasn't came out yet. We still have people who raped and tortured children, adrenochrome, harvest organs, still running free. But yet we still have political prisoners. We still have people like President Trump, parents, J6ers, everyday people who just try to do the right thing, being politically persecuted, and nothing happens to any of the evil, sick, demonic, communist Marxists.
And the crazy
I think
thing
part of
is,
the key, though, to taking back the country is, not allowing ourselves to be sucked into the QAnon conspiracy types. We don't have to go there. Like the whole thing that the pandemic was designed to get people to kill people and depopulate. You don't have to go there. Stick to what we know. Now, that's not to say to discount these conspiracies, the many that are out there, to say that but we don't have to go there to maintain an objective view of what's happening in our country. And it also preserves and protects our credibility. Now, to say that big businesses were the only ones bailed out, that's just patently false. There was trillions of dollars that came from Trump and Biden that bailed out thousands of small businesses that made more money in the pandemic by getting paid off.
I didn't say, I wasn't talking recently. I was talking about the 2008 when they bailed out the banks.
Yeah, well, but that was a whole different scenario. But the common people get bailed out every single day. As a matter of fact, why we didn't have a blowout in 22 is precisely that reason, because everybody gets a bailout nowadays. And I know business owners that had no need for money. They got $300,000 and $400,000 loans at 3% interest, 30-year rates. They took that money, the PPP money, and they put it in the bank. Many of them took the PPP money and put it in their pockets and aren't required to pay it back. So we've been bailing everybody and their mother out. That's the problem with this country. Not just the wealthy, but the average citizen is getting bailed out. That's wrong. That's bad. And I heard something about Fauci. Fauci's a horrible person, compromised. And you know what? This guy, he is much more about financial gain. He's one of those guys that is in it for the money, for the profit. Joe Biden the same way. Joe Biden's not smart enough to have a global business. He's never been a globalist. He doesn't have the pedigree. He's not a Harvard graduate. He went to Syracuse. He does not have the credentials to make it to that round table, but he sure knows how to make money and profit off his position. Fauci made a lot of money in the 80s. He didn't cause the AIDS epidemic. Men having sex with other men caused the AIDS epidemic. All right. But what he did do was profit off of it. What he did do is suppress the advancement of medicine that could have helped those people. He didn't cause it. He profited off of it by suppressing that. So I think we have to guard ourselves against falling into conspiracy ideas and theories and regurgitating what people out there are saying. we can get enough traction, way more than we need, by sticking to the facts and what we know and where this country is going. And I think we'll not only protect our credibility, but we'll reach more people when we sound like, okay, this is guy's not, he's not wearing a big hat with horns on it and, painting his body up. He speaks articulately, he knows what he's saying. And I think more people will listen to that. So I think we just have to be careful about where we go with what's going on. We don't need to go there. We've got the facts on our side, and that is way more than we're ever going to need to convince the American people that we're on the wrong track.
Right. Very, very well said. Brian, you brought up two things I want to touch on. I want to ask George about this. The January 6th scenario. The anniversary was just a couple days ago, George. On Saturday was the anniversary. We now saw a recent report, and DOJ officials come out and say that they are continuing to go after individuals that were at the Capitol that day, not even people that went in. If they just attended the event, if they were on the grounds, more than likely they're going to get questioned. The DOJ is not done. And think about how ludicrous this is. We're over 3 years since this happened, and they're still harassing.
They let Ray Epps off too, real quick, Rory. They let Ray Epps off too, as well.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, and that's something Greg and I were talking about yesterday.
Probation, $500 fine.
That's something that Greg and I were talking about yesterday on our show. How every case I've seen, I've never seen anybody just get probation. At the very least, the minor scenario, people get a few days or a couple of weeks. I've never seen somebody just get off with probation with January 6th, and that's why the Ray Epps thing is so sketchy, and we have to question, who is this guy really working for, because there's so many things that don't add up. I mean, he was so guilty of inciting dangerous activity, and it's all on video.
3 years they didn't do anything.
The guy's on video. Go ahead, George.
Yeah. I was going to say, for 3 years, though, they did not pursue him.
Right.
And, but for example, the guy they call the shaman, we now watch the video, and I guess because he was dressed oddly and kind of looked a little bit strange, it made it easy to sell him as if he was some kind of crazy lunatic who was leading this whole thing. But then when we see the video that was released, what we find was that he just wandered around with a bunch of policemen, behaved himself, actually went in and prayed in the Senate side of, and offered thanks for the kindness of the officers, and then left when they asked him to.
Right.
And I'm thinking to myself, if he's an insurrectionist, he's a horrible insurrectionist, because complying with them was not a good idea, right? He should have brought weapons. He should have said no. He should have done all kinds, but I'm not actually advocating you doing those things. I'm pointing out, though, that he was supposedly the ringleader. And that was the story they told the jury. It's what they told the judge.
Right.
And then the information comes out. We see the videotape, and his convictions, he's released from prison because none of it adds up. But Ray Epps, we actually have it on video. He gets no jail time. He gets a $500 fine. You can get a speeding ticket for more than that.
Right. Do we have I agree. Do we have the exact numbers on how many people went into the Capitol that day? Just in general, though, they shouldn't have done it in the first place. I mean, it was just a horrible idea in general. They shouldn't be crucified and locked up and punished the way they are. But yeah,
it is our building. I mean,
go ahead.
It is our building, though. I mean, they should be allowed to enter.
Invited in too.
Yeah, well, you're not allowed to smash windows and climb walls to get in. You can't use that as the excuse.
I said it is their building. They're allowed to go in it. That's all I said. You kind of say things that I'm not saying. I never said anything about smashing.
No, I'm just saying, you said it is our building. They're allowed to go in it. Yes.
Yeah, we're allowed to
I'm
go
just
in
adding to that. I didn't say you said that. I said, yeah, that may be true, but you're not allowed to smash it. I didn't ascribe that to what you said. I said, as much as it's our building, you can't smash the windows and break in.
Yeah, that's common sense.
Well, and that's the problem, is some people misbehaved.
Yeah.
And, there's no doubt of that. We've seen that.
Those might have been FBI informants that were doing that, George.
Yeah, they were not even sure they were Trump supporters. They may have been, plants. But what I'm getting at, though, is there were some of those people, And then there's a ton of people, you can actually watch the video where the police wave them in and say, come on in. And then they walk around and take photographs. They behave themselves. They stay between the various, rope lines and things like that. And they act like they're tourists. And then when they're asked to leave, they leave. And I'm thinking to myself, that can't be a crime. So I think we have to distinguish. It's kind of like if I'm in a bank the same day as a bank robbery and I'm conducting business, I think it'd be nice if they would distinguish me from the bank robber. The guy who walks in, I come in to make a deposit, I behave myself, I make my deposit, I leave. And as I'm leaving, some bank robber comes in and starts shooting people. It'd be kind of like, you can't just treat everybody in the bank at that time as if they're a robber. And I kind of feel like that's what's happened here, is that there were some people who misbehaved, some people broke the law, some people committed crimes, but now everybody within a mile of the Capitol is guilty. They've actually got people who never showed up anywhere near the Capitol, but flew to Washington, D.C. to have an interview for a job. And so because they flew into D.C., they are presumed to be there on that day to engage in an insurrection, but no evidence they were, and they get pulled in by the Justice Department. So this is not a serious effort on their part. They are clearly just trying to persecute people.
And George, I have to ask you this as a lawyer. There are numerous reports that point to and hint at Trump not pardoning and commuting all of the sentences for these January 6 individuals, because it's thousands and thousands. I want to know how you feel about that. Do you think he'll get to everybody, or?
Well, I mean, I think as an attorney, I'd want to look at the facts. And there's my point would be is let's look at what they did. If these were people who were invited in by the Capitol Police, motioned in, come on in, yeah. And then they just walked around the Capitol, took some photographs, and then they're asked to leave, they left. Mm-hmm. Then they absolutely ought to be, they should be absolved. That's the whole point of having that power, and why historically we've given constitutionally our executives the ability to do that so they can do justice. But I'm not saying that people who broke things, who committed crimes and so forth, but the question might be, what's the appropriate sentence? Like, let's say someone shoves somebody. Right. That's technically an assault. Right. How do we normally deal with an assault of that nature? That's different, for example, if you take a billy club to someone and beat them and send them to the hospital. Right. And so the question would be is, if somebody shoves somebody, and we can all agree, that's an assault, but it's a minor assault. So maybe they should have been fined $500. Maybe they should have had a suspended sentence of, something like that. But they ought not spend 3 years in jail. On the other hand, if they, took a crowbar to somebody and beat them and put them in the hospital, then they had to spend some time in jail for that. So I would just go through them case by case. And and that's what the process is. The president usually has a legal team who vet all these things for him, and then they give him their recommendations. Then he can look at them and make a decision as to what to do. And I would go through them one by one and just, I'm not interested in pardoning people who committed crimes, but I am interested in pardoning people who were just roped into this stuff. Because an example would be, what if you were a person who showed up at some sort of protest in one of the big cities where it got out of hand. And let's say you showed up in good faith, just being upset by the video you watched of George Floyd's, last moments in life. And you showed up there saying, I think that Black Lives Matter. And then as things got violent, you said, holy cow, I didn't sign up for this. And you leave. And you're like, I'm not going to be any part of that. You just showed up to kind of say, I think that, everyone's lives matter. That's why you were there. Mm-hmm. If they were then to grab those people and throw them in jail for 4 years, as if they were actually setting buildings on fire and attacking the police, I would oppose that as well. And the reason I would is because I'm a law and order kind of guy. I want the facts matter. And so this is the problem I see here is I don't even see them rounding at the people who started fires and firebombed courthouses and things like that when it comes to the other.
Even the
I think that's the big
insurrections that have been
problem
going on lately, George, like through the people who are elected pulling the fire alarm during sessions. Nothing happened to them. You know, it's just, it's all ridiculous.
Yeah, and he was interfering with the official business of Congress.
Yep.
Which we're told is why the people who walked into the Capitol are all guilty of a crime.
Yeah. What about that Capitol Police
invited in? They say, "Oh, they were interfering with official business."
Like, well, I will say this: you know, it's like everybody that comes to this country across the border, they've broken the law. You don't have to rape somebody. You're here. You broke the law. You're here illegally.
Yep.
Everybody in the Capitol building was there illegally. You have to go through the visitor center. They've got specific hours. If you're in there, even if you're there just to look, you're there illegally. So you broke the law. I get it. But that's a fact.
No, they were welcomed in.
Well, it depends on if a policeman
you know what, you can debate
door,
that.
I'm not sure that's the case. Like,
that is the case. You cannot just waltz into you cannot go to the Capitol building in any door you want. Certainly not through a window. You can't do that. It's against the law. We don't have a right to go to the Capitol building. You know what? It's midnight tonight. I think I want to go see
there's video of people literally being waved in by Capitol Police.
There is.
Yeah, well, I know there may be a couple, but there were hundreds of people who you could watch the video yourself. They were not being waved in. They were not being waved in. Now, unless you have not seen the entire video, which I haven't, and I don't think anybody here has.
No,
now,
it's 40,000
was the door broken open? And look, I play devil's advocate all day. They broke the law. I get that. Now, the problem is there's not equal protection, certainly not equal application of the law, because people were burning, looting, and killing in the streets, Antifa and BLM, and nothing happened to them, and they were ignored. And we've got millions of people that are coming into this country illegally, and nothing is happening to them. They're just allowed. But if you were in the Capitol building, I'm not justifying the response to people that were there, but I'm also not going to say they broke the law. That's a fact. Just go to the Capitol Police visiting the U.S. Capitol, or not Capitol Police, the U.S. Capitol, what the requirements are. You can't just show up whenever you want and go check out the rotunda. You can't. And there are places in that building you absolutely are not, even on a visitation, even with when you're getting escorted around, you're not going to be taken to certain areas. You're not allowed to go where the congressional people have their offices without permission, prior permission to do that. You can't just do that. So, I mean, this idea that they weren't breaking the law is like illegals that are here are not breaking the law. If they cross the border without permission, they're here illegally with their intent to stay. Now, the problem with this is the response and the incredible attacks on these people that came as a response, and the jail sentences, which are way disproportionate to what people who've done way worse got. You know, and how some people got off Ray Epps and how some people did not. That's really the problem. But look, everybody has to take responsibility for themselves. You know, individuals. You can't just say, you know. And I saw where the police were ushering them in, and what I saw on the doors is they looked like they were forced over. So I don't know what happened if the police, you know, at that point opened the door and said, "Come on in here," or were they trying to avoid a mob? I mean, you can make the case as like, okay, I got a mob out there. They're smashing windows. Clearly, they're smashing windows and climbing walls. Maybe we just better there's like one of me and 500 of them. It's not good odds. Maybe just open the door and let them in. Look, I've been there before.
Well, like Lindsey Graham said, should have just shot them all. Like Lindsey Graham said, Ashley Babbitt was killed by
somebody should have started with Lindsey Graham a long time ago. But so I don't know what's going through a cop's head. And a lot of those cops are, again, like brown shirts, you know, misguided themselves. Certainly the guy that murdered Ashley Babbitt, I'll say that guy murdered Ashley Babbitt. He had no right to shoot her right in the face. So he was aiming at her face.
Jeez.
And so, I mean, notwithstanding all of that, if you're going in there and you're going with a mob that's rushing and you're going up in there, you know, they didn't see the cops from afar before they crashed through the grate saying, "Come on in here, folks. It's going to be all right." They went through there with their own agenda and their own mindset. And I think deep down inside, they knew what they're doing is wrong. It just figured, hey, everybody's doing it, so I can get away with it. And that's the wrong attitude to have. That's what society has. That's the attitude of society. Hey, everybody's doing it, might as well. You know what? Maybe you be the standout and do the right thing.
And look at how the media, look at how the mainstream has portrayed this narrative and how they've convinced the majority of our population, more than not individuals, that it was one of the darkest days in our history. It was one of the worst terrorist events we've ever seen. The mind manipulation, the brainwashing is unbelievable. Just think about the kind of power that takes. I mean, it's quite fascinating. George, your thoughts?
Well, I think you're right about that. I mean, if you look at, the rule of law is pretty simple, and that is the law needs to apply to everybody. It needs to apply equally, and it needs to be, implemented in a fair way. The example would be if all four of us were to go in and rob a bank, then all four of us should have criminal responsibility for that, not just oh yeah, well, we're going to get Rory for that because he has this show and we don't like it. We'll let the other three guys off because they're not as guilty as he is of being you know what I mean? That's
I was
kind
just
of
driving, guys. I'm the getaway driver.
yeah. I mean, the rule of law is pretty simple. It's actually not that complicated. And when you're a 5-year-old, you're really good at detecting things that seem a little unfair. One thing I noticed about my little kids is my little kids all were aspiring lawyers. They all understood when something seemed not quite fair. Like, why am I in trouble for this when they get to do blah, 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 or whatever, you know what I mean?
Right.
And sometimes it's because they don't have all the facts, they're exaggerating something or whatever. But my point is, I think as human beings, we have a very natural inclination to ask ourselves, is this fair? And yet the left is not at all interested in that question. That question is of zero interest to them. And it's kind of a dangerous place to be because, it's like, if you don't pay your taxes, you go to jail. If you're Hunter Biden, you don't have to pay your taxes. Other people can pay it for you, and they can let it slide and let it go. And you can tell Congress that you're not going to abide by the law when it comes to testifying, and everyone else goes to prison if they don't do that. But you're protected. It's like this is a very weird kind of thing. I thought we fought a revolution to avoid this sort of rules where the king's friends got away with murder.
And George, don't you think there should be some sort of criminal penalty and accountability and justice for all these journalists that are able to get away with spreading these lies, and these networks that can really install these phony narratives in people's brains? I mean, to me, it's criminal. To me, this is...
There's no doubt that it's wrong, but the problem I have is in order to allow the criminal law to deal with it, then you basically put the government in charge of deciding who gets to say what and what's true and what's false.
Right.
Yeah. The Hannitys and the Rush Limbaughs would have been in jail a long time ago.
Right.
Like, it's free
That's
speech.
what worries me about
It's
that.
the freedom of the press, and that's why it's up to the American people to do their diligence.
But there's a difference between. But Greg, there's a difference between free speech and maliciously,
which is not
putting
allowed.
out narratives that are going to divide and destroy America.
Well, but the Supreme Court's already ruled on that. You can't, run into a crowded room and yell fire. So they've already ruled on that. But the fact is look, people who it's like, that's why I say freedom requires virtue. Virtue requires faith. Otherwise, it's whose moral law are you talking about? Moral law demands a moral lawgiver, and it can't be you or me. Otherwise, whose narrative? You want Rush Limbaugh's, or do you want Don Lemon's?
Actually, Don Lemon is starting his show on Twitter, and now he's strongly advocating for free speech. It looks like,
of course,
because Don Lemon has totally changed his personality.
But believe me, he's not going to be.
He's no longer going to be promoting.
He's not going to be promoting conservative values. That I can promise you. It's just like
he seems to be more of a moderate now.
No, don't kid yourself. He got screwed. He got screwed right up the butt. Now he's angry.
Talking a lot about free speech and how
of course. Yeah. He got fired. Look, it's just like Juan Williams. That clown. Juan Williams got fired from NPR for the very things that he stood up for. He ended up, they bite and devour. Be careful when you bite and devour one another, lest you be consumed by. Liberals always consume and devour one another. He got consumed. Then all of a sudden he goes to Fox News and look, I guess so. He's changed his ways. Look, but for a season, and then they go back like a dog returns to his vomit. So does the fool to his folly, and they become. So look, don't expect Don Lemon to become some bastion of conservative principles. No. He got fired. He doesn't like it. Now he's kind of preaching this message because he doesn't like the fact that he's out of money. These people, they don't learn their lessons. Not like that. They don't change the stripes. A leopard doesn't change his spots. But we don't need to give the left. That's why I always say we've got the truth on our side. We don't have to deliver them on a silver platter reasons to come up with all these things. January 6th was just give the radical left, who's going to hate us without a cause anyway. Well,
Right.
why the hell do you want to give them this massive event on a silver platter? I don't understand what people were going into that Capitol for. Did you seriously think you were going to stop the election from happening? Because if anybody had that mentality, then they should be locked up in a mental institution, not in a jail. If you actually thought that you can go in there and stop this thing and they're not going to count the votes and Donald Trump's going to stay. Listen, Mike Lindell is a nutcase. He said for months that the generals were going to take over and Donald Trump's going to be. I mean, this is nutcase stuff. We don't have to become a nut to stand firm on the truth. We've got the truth by our side. And the truth is for sane people. That kind of craziness, we're going to stop the counting of the votes. That's for nutcases. And when you're a nutcase, you're just giving the nutcase left more ammunition on a silver platter to make you look like what you are. We don't need to go there is my point. We've got the
Well, they
truth.
did stop counting the votes at 3 a.m.
What's that?
They did stop counting the votes at 3 a.m. and started it back up.
Okay, when I say that, okay, I'm assuming everybody realizes that means that Donald Trump is going to stay president. All right, not saying that you can't blow the building up, stop the votes for president. What I'm saying is you weren't going to stop the vote. You weren't going to prevent Joe Biden from becoming president. That was never going to happen. Mike Pence was never going to do that. I mean, so I'm speaking in the vernacular that you weren't going to stop Biden from becoming president.
Right.
That was never going to. If you thought you can go to the Capitol and keep Donald Trump in office, you were a fool or a nutcase, or I don't know, just maybe high on mushrooms and wanted to go have a good time. I don't know anybody that seriously thought, because if you seriously thought that, you need to be in a rubber room, because
I'm just
I don't know
saying
what land you're living in. It's not the land of reality.
On election night.
I want to transition.
Did you think they could stop and keep Trump in office?
On January 6th,
did you think that was possible?
But they're there to. I'm talking about they actually stopped counting the votes at 3 a.m. so they could add more votes for Biden and all that stuff in the swing state.
Look,
that's why
the electoral votes were already passed.
Brought out
we already had the electoral votes. All it is counting the electoral votes. It's not like voting voters, a million, 74 million. They're not counting 74 million votes. They're counting the electoral college. That's it. Hey, here's this state's got 23 electoral votes. Here they are, count them. This state's got 12.
Well, then how'd they say Joe Biden had 81 million votes?
That's not what they were doing in Congress with under the direction, the oversight of the vice president.
Somebody must have counted. Because
it's a wrong count. The vote count that Pence resided over on January 6th was the electoral votes.
Yeah,
they're coming from the states, and we already know what they were. All right. Now, we could talk about the shenanigans of how they got, how Michigan got its votes in Pennsylvania. Okay, that's a whole different story. But what Pence was residing over was opening up the envelopes. So you pull out the electoral votes. Right.
Yeah,
we already knew what they were, and that's all it is certifying those votes. It's basically just a rubber stamp. And it has nothing to do with individual votes. They're electoral votes.
Right. Guys, we have about 15 minutes left. I want to bring up this whole Jeffrey Epstein thing. George, what are your thoughts on these files being released? What we should expect in the future? Will anybody be held accountable? Do you think we'll have hearings? I mean, we've already had hearings regarding this stuff with, different people that were supposedly, abusing these girls. But your thoughts?
Well, I think as long as Joe Biden's the president of the United States and Merrick Garland's the attorney general, we won't see much happen here, because these are people who see the law as simply a political tool. Right. And so if they know who's on the list, they'll make sure to protect them and so forth. If we get a different set of leadership in Washington that have some sense of what the rule of law means, then certainly we can find out, assuming all the records aren't destroyed in the interim, the way, for example, the January 6th committee's tried to do some of its stuff. But bottom line is to expect this administration to do anything that doesn't actually benefit them is nuts, because they're the Praetorian Guard. They use the government and the power of government for one purpose and one purpose only, and that is to promote their power, their prestige, and their ability to govern.
Hey,
And
George, why wouldn't they try to hurry these cases up so Biden can pardon them, all of them? I'm surprised they don't try to get it all done while he's the president so he can actually pardon all of them and then really get away with it.
yeah, it could be that, my guess is I wouldn't be that shocked to find out that, a lot of high level people are on that list.
Oh, for sure. There.
And it could even be Joe Biden's on that list, to be honest with you. Because, the allegations with his daughter and some other things, you see all the weird stuff.
Daughter
he
wrote
does
in a
with
diary.
people and stuff.
I've seen Biden's
Biden didn't need to go to an island to
Yeah,
sniff
wouldn't we
people's
have
hair.
heard Biden's name years ago, though, when we heard Clinton's name and Trump's name and all these other names? We never really heard Biden's name.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not saying he's on the list. I'm just saying I'm confident Joe Biden's a pervert. That much.
Oh,
know.
yeah. Well, yeah, that's
So
a
the
no-brainer.
question is he on the list? I don't know, but
I mean, his own daughter wrote in a diary saying that she took showers with him. And
Dirty.
yeah, which is really disgusting and gross. But anyhow,
Yeah.
So I guess what I'm saying is that's one strategy would be to accelerate things so that he has time to pardon them.
That's not an option.
But
That's not a real option.
But I think politically,
like you're
that's
going to
not an
expose
option
people. You're going to expose people so he can pardon them and then make himself look even worse. That's never
right. That's
this is about a two-tier justice system.
It's the same reason why when he says that's the same reason why when he's asked will he pardon his own son, the answer is always no. But that won't be the case after the election. After the election, when it no longer matters, because it'll either be a lame duck president for 4 more years, or he'll be on his way out, or he's been replaced on the ballot, by someone else. He's going to pardon his son. I guarantee he will. It's just he can't admit to that right now because it doesn't look good. And I think pardoning 100 pedophiles is probably not going to play well to the American electorate. So I don't see why he'd want to do that.
You know what? There's no need for it because these people never are held. They're never, and I don't care if they're Republican or Democrats. The rich, the connected, the famous, they never go to jail. The only people that go to jail for pedophilia are people that live in trailer parks and people that are caught by Stone Phillips on Undercover.
How to Catch a Predator, Dateline, NBC, and oh no, that's what's that? I'm Chris Hansen.
Whoever it is.
Yeah.
Those are the only people that go to jail.
I remember Stone Phillips, though. He used to do it back in the day, too. But now Chris Hansen does it. And go ahead.
Whatever. You know my point. My point is only us regular folks go to jail for laws that we break. The wealthy, whether they're on the left or they get away with murder. Look we've got a Republican MAGA conservative named Matt Gaetz. All right. He's violated everything these people have done. All right. Matter of fact, that's for those who don't know, that's the reason why he wanted McCarthy out. Because the investigation in the ethics committee is still ongoing for him and apparently worse than George Santos when it comes out. But I digress. The reality is
only facts we deal with. We don't know. You got to deal with facts only.
Okay. Well, I do know Matt Gaetz. So these are facts that I do know. I also know the guy who was the Speaker of the House that worked for him. And so I have the facts. I won't even waste time, but I have the facts about this guy. And oh, by the way, he has the facts too. The FBI had the facts. The fact is he's on recording trying to get a girl to perjure herself, to subordination to perjury, telling her to lie, to say this, that. We already know that is a fact. We have a fact. We know that the girl was 17. Why? Because she actually said, yes, I was with him. She was 17. She happens to be a sex worker. Doesn't matter. She was underage. So that is a fact. He was with a 17-year-old underage. She lied about her age. She was in the sex industry regardless. It is fact that he transported her across state lines, which is a violation of the Mann Act for sex purposes. That is a fact. All facts. All very much facts. So I'm not speaking out of conspiracy or what we don't. We know that already. There are other, but again, goes back to the well-connected, the wealthy, the rich, the powerful. They're not held accountable. They're not held to the same standard. They get off scot-free.
That's true. So Gates and Luna had an event here for Tampa Young Republican Club this past Saturday. And I was speaking with Gates about, I was like, I hope you guys don't budge on the CR and I hope you shut the government down. He goes, well, I think we should attach border security to the CR. And then here they passed the CR without any border security. I kind of think Matt Gaetz blows a lot of smoke up people's asses when he speaks, and just
Ask him
I
what
mean,
his
that's
position
my
on climate change is.
huh?
Oh, I believe in public-private partnerships. But you believe climate change is real? Do you take Ramaswamy's position? For all that I think about Ramaswamy, he is the #1 guy on climate change. He calls it a hoax. How do you feel about that, Matt Gaetz? Well, I didn't go to Washington to argue with thermometer, and I think Republicans need to get on board with climate change. So look, the guy is a big, fat, ugly fraud. And I'll tell you what, he has serious daddy issues. I know that. I live in this district and know that family. Very personal secrets about that family. He's got daddy issues, so it's no wonder he acts the way he is. But you know what? His dad's worth $500 million. The guy's never going to go to jail.
It's interesting stuff. I want to bring up a troubling new report. Army staff baffled by sharp decline in white recruits in the last 5 years. Why are white people getting scared away from the military? What's going on? Is it all this political correctness? All this nonsense.
Yeah, fighting side by side with trannies, snowflakes, and sodomites is probably not my way of
listen to this. The decline of white recruits has also coincided with the Army missing its target of 65,000 recruits in 2023 by 10,000. Military.com reported Wednesday that Army internal data shows that a total of 44,000 Army recruits were categorized by the service as white in 2018, but that number has fallen consistently each year to a low of 25,000 in 2023. Jesus, that's a significant difference. You go from 44,000 in 2018 to 25,000 in 2023. What's going on, George?
What they don't tie is economics. Like, this is really like, just follow the money. You know, people go in the military, like it or not, for financial reasons. And you're talking about communities and communities of color economically. We know this is just a fact. All right, they're lower earning in the families, which is due to a lot of socioeconomic reasons. And generally, white young men, they don't need or feel the need to go in the military. Hell, half of them are living in their basements with their parents at age 35, so they don't need to go in the military. But you see a lot of these in the black community. It's like, hey, I got to join the military. So easy. It's free healthcare. It's a paycheck. It's a free room and board. So that's really why it's a question of economics. Whites are not really seeing the need to go get a job out of necessity. Minorities are seeing this as, hey, this is like, it's a good option. And frankly, it's a good option for everybody. But then again, you've got the obesity and the drug usage that 60% of the American youth are not physically qualified for the military, be it drugs or obesity. So look, there's a whole hurt locker on the military and our future prospects of being able to protect American national security on a multitude of levels and for a multitude of reasons.
Right. Well said. George.
Well, I think a lot of it, I mean, I agree that those are many of the factors. The other factor I would throw in is you have people like General Milley and the Secretary of Defense, Austin.
Who disappears for like a week or two without telling anyone.
There's that too. But these are guys that testify in Congress that our biggest problem, the greatest existential threat to America is the weather. So I'm thinking to myself, and then also they tell us that basically that America is a racist nation, and it's an unjust nation, and it's a bad place. It's totally unfair, and so it's like, so the country sucks. And would you like to sign up to put your life on the line to fight for that country? Like, what? No. And I'm not saying I agree with that statement. I'm saying that's their pitch. Their pitch is America sucks. Would you like to join to defend it? Or the weather's our biggest problem. Would you like to join the Army to help defend us against the weather? It's like, you'd have to be nuts to sign up for either of those two pitches. And that's the ones they give us the most on. And so basically what it really means is, and I don't think it matters what your race or anything is. You're just going to kind of go, yeah, I'm not that interested in signing up for that. That's stupid. And
it gets to a point where you only do it if you have to.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, there's no other options. And I think for minority communities, there's no other options.
I've talked to friends who are still in, and they say they have to go to these trainings to see whether someone's got a dick or not. why China and the rest of the enemies are actually training to kill. I think that's another reason is people see the administration and how the military is treated and used, saying, "Oh, we're not going to send our troops in," but then they go and send our troops in. Yeah, I don't want to go die for what seems to be not what we're supposed to, what we take an oath to do, and
Right.
so I tell people, all my friends, kids here, I wouldn't sign up to be in the military right now. Heck no. And I'm third generation. I'm proud of my family's service, but hell no. If I had a kid and he asked me if should I join? I'd be like, hell to the no.
Well, we're talking about really the disparity between why blacks or minorities are more represented and whites are decreasing. And again, a lot of it economics, but there may be an element of politics. I mean, look, what is it? 90%? How many votes? And notwithstanding the fact that the black vote's changing, but the vast majority of 90+% are Democrats.
Yeah.
And now, so if you're the father and you're a white father, you look at exactly what you're talking about, this administration and how we're not, why do we want to do the bidding for the Biden/Obama administration? And you're telling us, hell with the military, man. Do not go in the military. A lot of discouragement probably going on in a lot of white families. I know, as somebody who went to the academy, somebody who served many years in the military, somebody who has a son who's going to apply to both West Point and the Naval Academy. I'm not strongly encouraging him to say, yeah, you got to do this. Is a great deal. I'm not discouraging, but for that reason that, it's not the military that I served in by far. So there are, I think, the political differences between whites and blacks, which is impacting why you're seeing decreases in whites. But the ultimately comes down to economics, and this is the only option. This is the best option. Maybe it's the only option for those in minority communities, and white. It's maybe not the only option.
Right.
Hey, I hope your son picks the Naval Academy, by the way.
Yeah, I kind of hope he does too, but
nice. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm a Navy guy. My dad was Army, grandpa Navy, so I'm a Navy.
Yeah, I mean, a West Point guy. I went to the academy before I was discharged for medical reasons, but I like the tradition of the Army. But I'll tell you what, as far as serving in the Army, no. I mean, I served with him as a Navy guy, and I would much prefer the Navy.
Right. Very well said. Good stuff. Good stuff. I want to bring up this, George. I want to go to you first because you're a lawyer. Department of Homeland Security Secretary Mayorkas. Look at how pompous and smug this clown is. I mean, he skips the impeachment committee today. He's too busy to testify at a hearing. He's too busy, and that's what the claim is. He thinks he's too good to show up. He thinks he's better than everybody else.
Yeah, he's too busy working on the border.
Yeah, he's too busy waving people on in.
Yeah, his arms are sore. I don't think you understand how rough it is to be waving that many people in every single day. He's probably lucky he still has arms, So he probably needs medical leave for his arms to heal and stuff. But anyhow,
he can join the Secretary of Defense.
Yeah, but the reality is, this again gets back to the rule of law, because the way things work is, if Congress wants to hold in contempt, they have to make a recommendation to the Justice Department, and the Justice Department, headed up by Merrick Garland, will just ignore it and say, yeah, never mind, we don't care. He didn't have to show up. It doesn't matter to us. But if you're a former Trump employee, you better show up, and even if you agree to show up, but you didn't show up when they asked you to, but you say now you will, they're still going to sentence you, because that's the way they that's the way they roll. And so I think what it is he's pompous because he understands what the rules are. It's kind of like, if you were a defense or offensive lineman who knew that the refs were not going to call you for holding, you might even tackle the defensive end that you're blocking, knowing full well that the announcers might complain about it, and somebody might throw a red flag out and say, but as long as the refs go, we didn't see nothing wrong with that, it's okay, you can act with impunity. And that's Mayorkas and everybody in this administration. They all know that the administration has their back, and they can break the law with impunity, and it's okay.
And they know the Republican House isn't going to do anything to these
Right.
people too.
Right.
You know,
Well,
they're both
yeah,
they're
they,
all
they,
mindless
they have a
and
limited power to. They can certainly impeach them, but that doesn't mean they can remove them from office. The Senate
yeah,
has
but
to.
at least do it though. At least do
Well, I
something to make
agree.
it.
They ought to do it.
They did it to
I'm
President Trump
tired of
without
them saying
even
things
doing
like,
nothing wrong. I mean,
yeah, I'm
Well,
tired of them saying it
they're
won't
trying to
happen.
impeach the guy. They're trying to impeach the guy. Look, my argument is simple. It's like a twofold. I don't show up because number one, I'm a bozo. If the guy shows up, he's going to look like the idiot he is. There's no way he's going to shine. There's no way he's going to be able to answer, justify anything about the border security. So he's going to be a complete total failure if he shows up. And then he says, I'm too busy. Makes it look like I'm so busy working hard. So he gets like there's two lies built in there. He knows he doesn't want to expose what an idiot he is. And then he says, I'm too busy to make you think like, wow, you know what? Hey, the guy's got a big job. He's got a lot on his shoulders. He's always working, doesn't have time. So, like, it's like, come on, you're not too busy. You're just trying to make us look like you're busy and working hard. We know you're
He's doing
not.
nothing.
Yeah, nothing. And if he
Yeah.
shows up, he's going to look like a complete idiot. So that's
Well,
like
it's
the
not
easy
just that
one.
he'll look like an idiot. He'll actually get caught for the lies he's told because he has perjured himself on numerous
Yes, he
occasions
has.
when he's testified in the past.
But you know,
he
listen to
doesn't
his
want
speech though.
accountability.
He always these people, they're master manipulators. Like you listen to his speech. He says everything is being done lawfully. Now, what does that mean? Like, so in the law, if you cross the border illegally, you sign this document and we give you so he's being lawful. Yes, so he could say, well, we're doing things lawfully. If you come to this country in asylum, you do this paper. They're doing that paperwork. We're handling everything lawfully. My point is they like he doesn't say the border is secure and people aren't coming in. We're not. People aren't coming into this country illegal.
Well,
He says we're doing everything lawfully. So it's kind of like saying I don't remember. You can't really call that a lie because I guess
Well,
they
but
are.
he has repeatedly said it's secure. Maybe he hasn't.
Yeah, well, what is secure? That's what it was. Secure. Look, it's secure. We check these people coming in and they're signing. We're giving them letters to show in 2032. In his mind, he could say, yeah, that's secure. I mean, it's kind of like this benign term. Well, look, we're not shooting them with M16s and killing them. You know, I mean, so it's just these benign terms that he could always say, well, I wasn't lying. I'm lying. Secure. What do you mean secure? What's secure? Secure.
I mean, the guy has one of the most important jobs. I mean, the thing that, matters most. I mean, security, safety. And he just gets to walk free. There's no accountability. And this guy,
not any of them. The commander in chief, that's his number one role.
All of them get to walk free. It's disgusting.
It's unreal. I mean, we have millions and millions, and they're skewing the data. They're lying to us about how many people are here, how many people have come in. They try to make it sound as good as possible. They really mess with those numbers, and it's been proven. There were just reports that came out saying they were messing with the numbers. Good Lord.
That's the government's way. I don't care if you're talking about illegals. I don't care if you're talking about economic numbers, job losses, job gains. Yeah. It's all nonsense. It's just all laughable nonsense. Again, to shift topics, what Noe's talking about. How about the number we just got for the inflation, the CPI data of December, up 0.3%, making the year 3.4%, which has ticked up from 3.1% to the year. Oh, we've beaten inflation. We got the soft landing. Look at the numbers. And yet now, numbers, it's ticking up. So inflation ticking up, CPI ticking up. What does that mean? So, the job, we get these jobs, all of it's based on models and statistical analysis. When COVID first happened, we did some modeling at Georgetown of how many people were going to die. It was going to be in the millions by May. And that's just using statistical analysis. I mean, the curve just went like this. Now, people died, yes, but not to the extent that the known models that we use for various things in statistical analysis and econometrics and all of that, it said we were going to lose, I don't know how many millions it was, but by May there was going to be over 1 million people in America. It didn't happen. It's just like all of the things that happen in this country. They don't happen the way the government says. The government is going to report what they want you to believe is going on. And that's why it's incumbent upon people to do their due diligence and, cut through the facade of what the government is telling you. And we all know that the border is a absolute chaotic mess. The economy is an absolute chaotic mess. Our government is an absolute chaotic mess. The world and geopolitical situation is an absolute chaotic mess. But everything's going along like it's all good. Just everything's rosy. And that's why when the collapse happens, people think, whoa, where did this all come from? If you'd have had your eyeballs open, watch where you're going, you wouldn't have walked off the cliff. You've been walking toward that cliff for months, and now you're falling, crashing to your death, and you're wondering how the hell it all happened. Maybe open your eyes and you won't off the cliff.
And think about how extreme things have gotten. You have Mayor Eric Adams wanting people to leave school and work remotely so illegals can fill their facilities. You have
he did it.
You have a governor named Healy and other governors now. I don't know what state Healy is. But anyways, long story short, you have this certain governor asking people to take illegals in their homes. There are reports that eventually this will become mandatory. And we've talked about how people will fight back like hell if that becomes a reality. And the incentive, just the different money that people can get off of this in the future. That they can treat it like a Section 8 situation where landlords, get this money from the government to house these people, and it's never ending.
Well, Gavin Newsom also said they're going to start in California paying for gender affirming care of illegals. I'm thinking to myself, that's going to be awesome.
They're already getting
they already pay for illegal immigrants health care already in California. So
and it was only gender. I would be like, okay, less because how many of them want to cut their dick off? He's giving them health care, all of them. But this again, they've got sanctuary cities all over the country. They've been doing.
And he wants to raid California's rainy day fund to help fill the $38 billion
deficit. Yep.
Yeah, it's actually if he does nothing, it's 68 billion. But then this is what I'm talking about.
Though, before they got the federal bailout when Biden took over too.
But this is what I'm talking about. The sanctuary cities, bring them all in. They create all these messes, and now their cities are in chaos. Like this, it's not like you didn't see this coming, Mayor Adams and Gavin Newsom and Holcomb. You've been calling all of these things. You've been creating this this future for decades. And now it's right in your backyard. Now you're seeing the ugliness of what those of us who said this is a huge mistake said would happen. Now it's in your face and it's in your backyard. So you're kicking kids out of school and putting this giant mess. It's as if they just fell off the cliff immediately. You've been walking toward it for years. Why should this surprise any of you?
Biden inherited this problem, right?
Did you guys see the mom in New York today that got pissed off and went down there and started raising hell because she said her son got kicked out so an illegal can go in?
I mean, this is what's crazy though, is you have people like the White House claiming that this problem these are problems they inherited. Like, no, these are problems you created. Why do you keep using that word inherited? I do not think that
because anything bad they blame President Trump for. They farted wrong. It's President Trump's fault. Everything.
But look at that poor woman though. It's somewhat what the point made earlier. What can she do about it? You're yelling at him. I hope you feel good. Hope you sleep good. You know what? That and a quarter won't even get you a cup of coffee. Her kid's out of school. This is the helplessness that the people are. You know what? And that's why they that Van Sester, the old guy, he said that pent up anger and frustration due to economic stagnation, moral decline, spiritual impotence, political corruption, it always gives rise to these crass manipulators. And the American people are feeling helpless. And with helplessness comes hopelessness, and with hopelessness comes despair. And we are like right on the edge of the point of no return. And I don't know as what you may build. It's just I don't know that you would think you could save the republic. If I were a gambling man, I would say no, and that's pretty sad. I'd say no.
Right.
Me too.
And we were talking about just this illegal stuff and these aliens. I have to really wonder how many exactly are voting in our elections, because I know it's a shit ton.
Yeah.
I bet it's millions at this point. And look at the caravans that are coming. Never ending.
Speaking of aliens, did you see the big thing that happened in Miami. I guess apparently over 50 police officers came to some spot in Miami. Supposedly
Yeah.
it was an alien or something. I don't know. I didn't get the chance to really dissect it. I saw a brief headline on it, and I was
Yeah,
like,
they were giving us enough information on that situation. It was kind of something that we saw for a second and then went away.
yeah, huh.
Yeah, when do we ever see that many police cars though for something that we would have heard way more about it, I feel like. I mean, you just fishy, very fishy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Guys, I want to bring up Fetterman. Oh man, this guy's I'm really impressed. I mean, it sounds like
mind-boggling
he's a Republican.
idiot.
This does not sound like somebody in the Democratic Party. I mean, he's speaking out about what's going on in South Africa with white genocide. He's speaking out against the devastation and the chaos at the border. He's speaking out against China and the dangers they are with our trade wars. This guy sounds extremely conservative, man. Way more conservative.
The guy did have
more
a stroke.
Conservative than Dr. Oz, I'll tell you that.
Well, the guy did have a stroke. So
well,
yeah,
you know,
this is the cure. I think this is the cure for Democrats.
I'm impressed by how quickly he's been able to come back and rehabilitate and really.
I'm thinking that this is a cure for Democrats. If they all have strokes, maybe they'll come back talking some common sense.
George, your thoughts?
He's not even stumbling anymore.
Yeah, I do think that what this demonstrates is that when you're mentally impaired, you're much more likely to be a liberal. And when your faculties return to you, you're more likely to be center right.
Right.
Well, but you know, the physiological.
He's no longer a left-wing kook.
But the physiology.
He also just read some polling data and realized that he can't win statewide as a left-wing kook.
Yeah.
It was a sad day for our candidates running for president. I guess Chris Christie finally out of the race.
Yeah,
he can go back eating his donuts and whatever else he does in his spare time.
But you know, Fetterneck is classic. You know, younger guy has a stroke. You know, with the right mental speech therapy, guys like that can recover. As opposed to someone like Joe Biden. Joe Biden's his brain is hardening, and he's getting that plaque buildup. There's no recovering a guy like Joe Biden. But Fetterneck is showing that, you know, with the right therapy, he's made a profound leap in his comeback. But I think a lot of these radical leftists, or supposed radical leftists, if they really kind of get out of their shell and their element, they don't believe that crap. You know, most of them kind of go along because, you know, maybe they feel like they have to, or they kind of want to be team players. But I think a lot of them might be like Fetterneck. They're not all completely devoid of common sense. And while it's true that, you know, Fetterneck, he needs to play to the middle if he wants to get reelected in Pennsylvania, and whether or not they're playing into him. But I think deep down inside, this is crazy batshit nonsense that these radical leftists project. And not all of them belong in a rubber room. And when they come out of themselves and are secure enough to say that what they believe to be true, I think you get guys like Fetterneck come out and speak sense.
And he gives us hope.
What about that Bills guy?
He gives us hope that there are still reasonable Democrats out there. People that,
he's the only one so far.
Right.
You can count them on one hand for sure. You don't need any more than one hand.
Right.
Yeah. What about that Buffalo Bills guy? You think he came out a little smarter now after his heart collapsed on the field? And
Damar Hamlin?
Yeah, Damar Hamlin.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
So we got about 5 minutes left.
I want to know if he got a shot. I want to know if it's COVID related or shot related.
Supposedly he did take the jab, and I believe it's because of that. But
he definitely did take the jab, and I think that's definitely what caused his injury. I mean, Pentagon. You know, I have to ask you this, George. We have about one topic left. We're about to close, but Lloyd Austin, George, how do you feel about this? Very troubling, obviously. You know, cancer.
So let's assume that someone launched a missile at us. We'd have about 30 minutes to figure out what our response should be.
Right.
So I guess we're going to burn through that entire 30 minutes trying to find the Secretary of Defense.
Yeah.
That's great. Really great. So it's not just about, people act like, oh, you're just being partisan. It's like, no, actually, it's not. I don't know if the Secretary of Labor, if everyone needs to know exactly where the Secretary of Labor is on any given moment, because national security is not at risk. And, we could wait till tomorrow morning to determine what the unemployment rate is or something, right? But with national security, we have all kinds of rules and regulations about that simply because of the need to make sure that they're. And then the other thing, well, this is very revealing, that the president wasn't meeting regularly. So we've got war in Ukraine, we've got war in the Middle East, we've got China on the march against the Philippines and Taiwan and
border
increasing threats. And apparently for more than 5 to 6 days, Joe Biden never even talked to on the phone, much less in person or any other sorts of meetings with his Secretary of Defense. It's like, what? This is nuts. This is crazy. He should, in today's world, with all the risks that are going on, of the Houthis that are shooting at our soldiers in the Middle East and at our ships and so forth, he ought to be talking with them every day. So he would know, but he didn't even know. So that tells you that Joe Biden's not even engaged. And of course, neither is our Secretary of Defense. So we're in a much worse situation than we might have even realized before, even though I think things like the Chinese spy balloon should have tipped us off. But we have some problems here because basically we have people who won't, it's one thing, Mayorkas not doing his job is bad enough, but at least he's not responsible for defending us against incoming missiles.
Right.
Did any of the reporters ask Obama if he knew at all where Lloyd Austin was? I was just
yeah.
And,
Here's the reality. It doesn't matter I don't care if he was the energy secretary. I don't care who he was. The fact that he was a defense secretary, given the geopolitical situation, just it makes the level of magnitude in this, what you would say, incompetence or lack of leadership, it almost is exponential. But anybody who works in this administration that's going to go to the hospital and lie and say, I'm working at home, not tell his deputy subordinate and not communicate to your boss. I mean, I don't care. In all my years in the military, not a single person could do that and go get an operation without advising his command.
That's called AWOL, right, Greg?
What's that?
He's basically AWOL.
Yeah, it would definitely be there would be consequences, severe consequences, and then to lie about it as well. So if Joe Biden was a real leader, which we all know he's not, and he's not the president, he's the president in name only.
Mm-hmm.
This is the Obama administration, but he should be fired just on basis of, forget about all the national security risks. I get all of that, but he should be fired just on basis of egregious, gross insubordination. You simply don't do that. I mean, This guy wouldn't last a microsecond under the Trump administration. You're fired, pal. You're fired. How dare you? How dare you do that? And then go in the ICU, no less, and not tell anybody. Me, I should have been notified before you went. You get my permission, all right, to do anything. Because maybe I would have said, hey, I don't like the fact that you're going in there. I want your deputy in charge. I want everybody in play. And maybe you just might have resigned. I'm going to put it's up to the president. You serve at his interests.
Now, Greg, didn't his aide or somebody know, and then she went and home for a few days and didn't say anything either, or something like that?
Well, I think they said that he was going to be working at home. He lied and said, I'll be working from home. Yeah. I mean, everything about it is it just screams, you're fired. You're fired. You have to do that. I mean, the President Biden has zero credibility by not firing him. Yeah, well, I mean, not court-martial, he's a civilian, but this, if you...
he's general.
Yeah, he's a civilian now.
Right.
He was, but he's a civilian now. And which then begs the question, is the military, I mean, our military is run by civilians. What was the military? Were generals running our military? That's not how America works. Civilians run our military, not the generals. So who the hell was running? Who the hell was launching strikes when this guy's in the ICU and ordering the strikes? It wasn't the president. It wasn't the SecDef. Was
Right.
it some bureaucrat or was it some general? I mean, did he
Military
have his
industrial
finger on the
complex.
button for nukes? I don't know.
Yeah, and
But
you brought. Go ahead.
well, you have to, just on basis of insubordination, the president must fight. He could have been the greatest Secretary of Defense in the history of the United States of America. Because of what he did, he has to be fired. He just has to be. He has to be.
Yeah, and you brought up a little bit ago just the timing of all of this with all the wars we're in. Horrible timing. I mean, yeah, no excuse at all. The courteous thing would do is resign. Resign. If he was a true professional and had any dignity and proper ethics, he would resign.
Unfortunately, we know he doesn't have any
Yes,
of that.
obviously he has too much pride. He thinks,
And greed.
oh,
What do you think
yeah.
that fat ass would do if one of his subordinates did that to him? What do you think that fat ass Austin would do if one of his subordinates just went in and got a facelift? You know what? Maybe she went in and got a boob job, had complications, and went in ICU. What do you think he would do? You're fired. Sorry,
Yeah.
you're fired.
Probably send him to jail or whatever.
Yeah, I agree. It's insane. It's insane. If one of us or just the everyday person did something like this, big penalty. But people at the very top,
Yeah, try not to show up at work.
Seems
like they rarely pay a price.
Call your boss.
They
and
never
see what
do.
happens.
right?
Just like I said, they don't go to jail.
Right.
They don't get fired. They're never
Right.
held accountable. They don't
Do
have
as
to.
I say, not as I do.
As always.
That's why I don't think our republic's savable, is because none of these people are ever held accountable.
Right. And to conclude here, last thing, and then we have to take off. George, I want to start with you. They are saying they're going to try to hold Hunter Biden in contempt of court. Do you think that's going to go anywhere, or do you think that's pretty much political theater at this point?
Well, I think they can vote and should vote to hold him in contempt because he's clearly
And they're
in
threatening him
contempt.
with jail
They
time too, and
Yeah,
massive
but the
fines.
problem is, I don't think Merrick Garland will do anything. Now, there was a time in our history where Congress could actually hold you in contempt,
Right.
and then there was a jail downstairs in the basement of the Capitol, and they could have their, they could act on that. But we've since changed the rules, and so now basically what it works out to is someone like a Merrick Garland is going to protect the president's son from accountability and allow him to disobey the law. It's the same reason why they, for example, allowed the statute of limitations to run on several years of tax evasion. Why did they do that? Because, hey, now he didn't have to pay the taxes for it anymore. We let it go. It's not a problem. And that's just how they run things. So it's not entirely political theory or theater, because on some level, even a vote to hold him in contempt is important. It helps raise awareness among the American public. If Congress won't even hold him in contempt, then how could you possibly expect the public to be upset with him or with the Biden administration for its lawlessness? You've got to actually have the debate. You have to have the conversation.
George,
You've got
isn't
to
it-
do same thing with Mayorkas. You've got to impeach him. What you can't do is say, yeah, we're not going to impeach him because if we did, the Senate wouldn't vote for it anyhow. Doesn't matter.
Sorry, George. Is it the same as that the Republicans doing an impeachment inquiry into Joe Biden, but really didn't take it anywhere from there, though?
Well, I don't know if we know yet what they're going to do. I'm assuming they're still doing the impeachment inquiry, and I would argue that they now have plenty of evidence. They have like 10 times to 100 times to 1,000 times more evidence to justify the impeachment of the current occupant of the White House than they ever had for Donald Trump.
But why didn't they do that with President Trump? President Trump got impeached within 2 weeks of this on the second one.
It's Democrats versus Republicans. Obviously, you do things differently.
They play these games. They play political games better than we do. We spend too much time.
They don't give a damn because Democrats don't give a damn. And now,
Exactly.
the political theater. Look, the Republicans are doing what they're going to. It's not going to be theater. They're going to vote, and they're going to hold them in contempt. And what you said, George, whether or not the Garland in the Justice Department does anything remains to be seen. I doubt that they'll do anything.
Yeah, I agree.
But part of the Biden impeachment hinges on Hunter Biden. So a lot of the things that they're going to talk about was also going to play into to Joe Biden's impeachment. So all of it's tied together. It's not like, hey, they're not going after Joe Biden. They're going to go after Joe Biden, but this was a big part of it, a big component of it. Because remember, a lot of it is tied to his son Hunter and the involvement that Joe Biden had in facilitating all of the money and all of the criminality that's involved there. So
Hunter's the bag man for the family business.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Sure.
You know, Republicans. The problem with Republicans is they're too nice. They think that they can, you know, if they had a little bit of that "I'm going to kill you" attitude like Democrats had, then things might go along a little bit faster. But you know, for whatever reason, many of them. What's that?
They're afraid and no balls.
Pretty much. I mean, a lot of them, they just they're pussies. A lot of them. Let's face it. Let's just call it what they are.
If Trump wins, will he let this go? Will he let them be? Or do you think he will pursue Biden and the crime family?
I believe he pursues it for sure.
You know, I'd like to think yes.
He personally doesn't pursue them because I don't want it to look like it's just retribution. What I would want is to have a special counsel appointed who's actually a real special counsel, not the fake kind that, what's his name, Jack Smith is, but a real independent counsel, and then have him do it and go after them and follow the law and follow the facts.
But we had special counsels during President Trump's presidency, and that didn't go anywhere either. Like, I mean,
yeah.
But you know what? And then Trump, Trump ran on lock her up, and he completely dropped that too after. And then remember when he got elected, and they're like, lock her up. He goes, no, we don't say that anymore.
Right.
Right. Well, and I mean, I'm not saying that.
Think about how much Think about how much money he made on merchandise and just marketing that slogan.
For sure,
a ton.
Even during the debate,
remember he said, "President campaigning on locking people up." And then doing it, I'd rather. So I was actually glad he didn't, because I don't want us to look like a banana republic. But Joe Biden's making us a banana republic. But my view would be that Joe Biden should not get away with what he's done. But what you don't want is to have it look like it's political retribution. You want it to look like it's just the law and the facts. And so you have to basically get the president to not be directing it. I think it'd be really unhelpful to have the president basically be directing things, as, for example, the Biden administration has done. We now know that Fannie Willis and all these other people have been colluding with and working with the White House to go after Trump.
But in order for that to happen, George, though, President Trump's got to fire the entire FBI, the entire DOJ, and actually rebuild it, and then have them follow the facts and the evidence.
I agree with you. Yeah, the FBI from top to bottom, not that there's nobody that works there that's not a good person, but it is corrupt as an organization.
Right.
It's got to be turned upside down.
George,
and the DOJ is probably even worse.
96% of the media is left-wing progressive Democrats. You know, it's damned if you could do
I've been saying that for years. We only get about 3% on our side. The rest is
But that's garbage. That's why it doesn't matter what Trump does.
The number of conservatives in the media.
Yeah, but that's why it doesn't matter what Trump does. If Trump does nothing, Republicans continue to get bulldozed by the radical left, and we continue to get shafted and never held to the same accountable. If Trump does do the right thing, then it doesn't matter who does it. It's all going to be Trump getting retribution. It doesn't matter what the law, it doesn't matter how egregious the violations and the criminality of these people is. It's all going to be, it's just retribution. So there is no win in this. There's no way for Trump or Republican administration to win on this. So you just stick to do what's right. It's the right thing to do to hold criminals accountable for their criminal activity. And I don't care if you're going to blame me for it. If you say it doesn't matter, because if I do nothing, if I turn a blind eye to it, I'm going to make the problem worse for us in the future. Right. So you just have to stand on what's right. You do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. So that means that these people need to be prosecuted. If they've done wrong things, they need to be prosecuted.
The right thing to do is not for the president to be directing people to prosecute them. It's him to direct them to follow the law.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like, we all know it's almost like mutually exclusive. If you follow the law, you will be prosecuting these people, because these people.
I totally agree.
Exactly.
Guilty as sin.
For sure.
Guilty as sin.
Crimes against humanity and genocide is what some of them have committed.
George, you brought up the FBI and how corrupt they are and how it needs to be cleaned up. But Trump came out a couple weeks ago, and a reminder, he's been very critical of the FBI. He's said numerous times that he wants to, seek justice and he wants them to pay a price and he wants to clean house. But then a couple weeks ago, he says on his social media, on True Social, he wants to give the FBI a beautiful new building when he gets into the White House. So I'm wondering I'm trying to figure this guy out. You know, he says one thing and then he says something entirely different.
Does he mean he's going to take down the current one and then put a new one in somewhere else in the country, or?
No. He said he's going to give them a brand new, beautiful building because apparently the FBI was going to be moving or something. I don't know. There's
they
reports
supposedly needed a bigger building and so forth. I think my
They need a bigger
response
boat.
would be, I'd raise the current building. I would also abolish the FBI completely.
Yep.
And then I would figure out what to do. Maybe you take the U.S. Marshals and expand that to fill the role that the FBI was supposed to be filling, but has become the Praetorian Guard for the left. And but I think symbolically it would make sense. Like I'd get rid of the IRS too.
Three-letter agencies.
Have to be a federal tax division somewhere, but I don't want it to be called the IRS. And I'd raise the building and fire everybody there just to make it clear we're not going to tolerate this lawless crap any longer.
Yep. Get rid of the Department of Education.
The value of doing that.
Yeah. Mark, you have any thoughts before we take off?
Well, yeah. I think that part of the problem is there's too many. First of all, a third, at least a half of the cabinet position should be eliminated altogether. At least start with the Department of Education. The rest can be combined. You could have three major main cabinet positions, and they should be moved out of Washington, D.C., including the FBI.
Yep.
Personally, I think the FBI should go away anyway. We got marshals, but you know what? Take the FBI out of Washington, D.C., spread all these cabinet positions, reduce it to 3, maybe 4 at the most. Get them the hell out of Washington, D.C.
Yep.
There's no reason why they should all be commingled in there, and that's where you get this deep state. Move them out. Not only do you spread the wealth around the country, because these are multi-million, billion-dollar operations for communities and economies, move them around, spread it around the country. Why should DC be reaping all of the windfall profits from all of that? Plus, it will reduce the ability of the deep state to grow its deep roots right there in a city that is the city of prostitutes. That's number one. And apart from that, and shrinking the government down, none of this is going to change. And you know what? Sadly, I mean, Christopher Wray is a rotten guy. He was appointed by President Trump.
Right.
Yep.
As was
Chris Christie told Trump to pick him, and Trump listened to Christie.
Yep.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Greg. You wanted to finish your
No,
thought?
so I mean, we need to dissolve or let's say water down Washington. We need to get these cabinet positions out of DC, spread them around the country. And, look, everybody goes by Zoom. You're going to have cabinet meetings, have it just like everybody else does it. Get a Zoom meeting, or you fly them in once a quarter to you have your meetings. There's no reason why they all need to be located. If you've ever been to DC and you drive by these buildings, you just look at them, Department of Commerce, this massive complex, the Department of Interior, like what the hell's going on in there? Why do they need this building? I mean, all these massive multi-million-dollar operations and buildings and people, it's just ridiculous. Get them the hell out of that.
Yeah, it's not even in America. None of it's even in our own country. It says District of Columbia, and that doesn't sound like the United States of America to me. So I'm with you. I get rid of all the 3-letter agencies, definitely the Department of Education, abolish that, get everything out of DC, even the White House and all that. And yeah, I'm with you guys. I agree.
I mean, one person could do the job. Like, you need agriculture, you need commerce, you need labor, you need human services. Look, you can make that all one person. Take 4 departments, combine it into one, fire 70% of the people, and get more work done for a fraction of the dollar. And send it to Tennessee. Memphis, Tennessee. They need a shot in the arm economically. Send them down there, and they can bring that wealth and grow that city there. We could build 5-6 cities around the country around these cabinet positions, rather than this city that is immune from recessions, depressions. Washington, D.C. is immune from any economic downturn. I mean, their prices, their property, real estate continues. It doesn't matter what the market looks like. Everybody makes more and sells more in Washington, D.C. They're immune. That's something wrong with that.
It's true. Very well said. George, final thoughts, and then tell everybody where they can find you. You're on mute. You're muted, George.
I agree. When George Washington was president, we had a War Department, we had a Treasury Department, and a State Department. And then we also had an Attorney General. No actual Department of Justice, just an Attorney General. And that was it. That was and I'm thinking to myself, if we could head back in that direction, we may not get all the way there, but if we could get 3/4 of the way there, that would be very, very helpful.
That'd be awesome.
Amen.
So, and you can get me. I'm here at Frontiers of Freedom, as you can see over my shoulder there. Frontiers of Freedom, ff.org, ff.org.
Perfect, my friend. Greg Merck, tell everybody where they can find you, get involved.
Always here on the network and on all the social media platforms. And as a note before I go, the first 3 months of government, we run up a $510 billion deficit. That's over $2 trillion that we're on track for. And that will be a minimum. So anybody that thinks that inflation has been beaten needs to pull their head out of the sand.
Yeah, things are going to get worse than the Great Depression. I've been talking about this for a long time. Much worse than 2008.
For sure.
Breaking news that came out: China now becomes the world's top exporter of cars.
EVs, yeah, cars, yeah, crazy
stuff. Interesting times. Brian, final thoughts, and tell everybody where they can find you.
Yeah, everybody, buckle up. 2024 is going to be a hell of a ride, like a lot of us just been talking about with the economy, especially. Me personally, I'm not a financial investor. I am adding gold, silver, precious metals, land, different things to my portfolio. Definitely stocking up on different things for trade and bartering system. Just enjoy the time with your friends and family. Who knows if our republic will be saved or not? But the main part is remember, God has won this battle. It's about just spending time with your loved ones, loving your neighbor, just preparing for in case Christ returns. But other than that, just live each day to the fullest. Live in the moment. Get rid of your stupid cell phones. Enjoy the people around you that you're with. And I wish and pray for everybody to have a blessed 2024. I pray for healing. And I just pray for just hope is restored. I really do. But you can find me here on NexGen Live, Censorless TV, and all not all social medias because I'm banned on Twitter and certain ones. But you can find me throughout. Just type my name in. It's pretty simple for me. Like I'm on YouTube and here. So anyway, that's pretty much it. It's great to see all you guys. I hope you guys had a great holiday and everything. I was actually in the woods with my dog. We were out camping in the woods in the freezing ass cold, and it was a lot of fun.
Oh, good times. Well, everybody, it's been a fantastic show tonight. I want to thank you all for tuning in. Another episode of NexGen Live in the books. We will see you all very soon. Until then, I'm Rory Sauter. God bless. Much love. Cheers, everybody. Good night.